Hello and welcome to the Monday Night Live show, where together we discover what's going down around the underground scene with a focus on independent publishing. The date is November 27th, 2023, and this show is brought to you by yours truly, the man broadcasting from behind the curtain. You know who I am. Because if you don't know by now, you can visit www.livefreeliverich.com or simply Google this name and you'll find out. Now I'd like to take this time, slide right inside my first segment of the night where I like to shine a spotlight on some books. That's right. That are currently available or coming soon to an online store near you. Yes, it's true. Let's see what we have up first tonight. We have from Shiv Saywack. Looks like we're going to be closing out our coverage of the Mary Finch series. This one is entitled Mary Finch Endgame, appropriately enough, by S.S. Saywack. Another thrilling installment of the Mary Finch mysteries, perfect for fans of Enola Holmes, Sherlock Holmes, and classic crime fiction. As Christmas 1893 approaches, the future looks bright for Mary Finch. No longer a maid, she is about to take up employment in the most secretive of places when an old enemy comes back to haunt her. Suddenly, her life is turned upside down when her best friend is arrested for murder and she is attacked and almost killed. Mary must hurry to discover the truth before it is too late. This enemy is bent on revenge and will not be satisfied until she and Archie Dibble are dead. This is 260 pages of 1837 to 1901 history of UK. It's a very specific category. Cozy mystery and cozy mysteries, kind of a middle grade here. Okay. Up next, this comes from someone by the name of Andrew Jollymore. Says, enjoy. Born to be Knighted. Shares a link to his book. His book entitled Born to be Knighted, The Red Army by Andrew Jollymore. Hey, Nicole, welcome. Okay, there is the cover. Now let's check out that blurb. Jesse exited the forest onto his dad's field. The sight before him left him standing still in shock. Instead of a field full of corn, he was seeing soldiers all standing in a line facing him, with many tents and campfires spread over the land. He always had an imagination and had adventures with it, but this was too real. No one moved, but a sound from the forest drew his attention. Clutching his backpack full of books, he watched a trail of fire coming toward him, and then men with swords and men on horseback, all burning red, went past him to the soldiers that stood nearby. Just then, one of these burning soldiers drove a burning axe into his backpack and sent him flying. Was this the end of Jesse, or just the beginning of the greatest adventure he would ever experience? 446 pages of time travel fiction, fantasy, action, adventure. I don't want to, if I had to assume by the blurb, I would say this one almost sounds like a middle grade as well, or maybe perhaps even a young adult. Kids wearing a backpack. Okay. And one more book for tonight. And this next one actually comes from the Discord. This one comes from the Discord server. And all these books, mind you, all these books are suggested to me directly by the publishers themselves. So they're suggested to me by the publishers, whether they be a representative of an independent label or a small press company, or by self-published authors. And this next one is entitled "The Winged Hussar / Diggin" from Worse World, which I think might be either a title for a series or subtitle, and that is by Fredrick Neri. And links to the both network servers, our Discord and our Gilded. We have open invitations to those down in the show notes down below. Open invitation. Everyone is welcome, regardless if you are a creator or a supporter of the independent market. Okay. Let's see what we have here. After Bozgorsky got his money stolen and fellow Hussar captured by the evil Arield commander, Dukin Schmickmal, he alone must mount his horse, turn a mob of miserable drunks into a fighting force, capable of making a last stand against the mighty magical tanks of the Reich, and save humanity in a world that hates them? Find out in The Winged Hussar. Then, in Diggin, join Lars, the street rat, as he attempts to save his sister from a lifetime of poverty and neglect by slaughtering orphans? Can he commit enough crimes to save who he loves by serving a traumatized deity, or will she be next? Find out in this never-before-seen extended version of the story as seen on Ian Kirkpatrick's LMIAY. Ah, yes, I am familiar with Miss Patty Cake. 48 pages of 90-minute science fiction and fantasy short reads, fantasy anthologies, and short stories. A little bit of a double dose, if you will, of short fiction. Thank you for sharing. And those are the books for this week, ladies and gentlemen. You know what the deal is. If you're watching this on the replay, you can head on over to my community tab where you can cast your vote for which one out of those 3 books you thought had the most text appeal. That's right. In other words, which one out of those 3 aforementioned titles would you be most likely to pick? And if you would like to discover more from the independent market, you can head on over to my playlist tab and open yourself up some mystery packs. Inside each mystery pack, there's a cover card that will reveal a book from the independent market that was recognized by the Live Free, Live Rich Network. And inside the description section of each video, there's a link that will take you to an editorial written specifically on that work by yours truly. And now let's get into some announcements. What do I got? Creative announcements for you guys. Creative announcements. You can check out my latest performance in Doorway to Nightmare. That's right. Doorway to Nightmare. What is Doorway to Nightmare? Doorway to Nightmare is a creative project inspired by old-timey radio dramas. And this is a show that is produced by Winslow Swan and Crimson McKenzie in the mystery thriller genre. It's kind of an anthology series where each episode is its own standalone story featuring a fresh cast of characters voiced by real human actors. That's right, voice acting. And you can check out this latest episode entitled Last Chance, which premiered this past Friday, and featuring the voices of Crimson McKenzie, William Stafford, Raven Adams, and yours truly. I'll be leaving a link to that in the show notes for your convenience. Also, I do have an opportunity for my fellow writing peers out there who are interested in collaborations. The Storytellers Society, still accepting open submissions. This is a public collaborative project, basically an outreach program, really, for my peers in the writing community. What I'm looking for is flash fiction for this project. Flash fiction for this project is fiction that is between 500 all the way up to 2,000 words. This can be fiction that you actually have published somewhere else, so long as you own the copyright and you have the right to give me permission to republish it on my blog, where it will be free for public viewing from now and indefinitely. Just because you submit something doesn't mean that your work will automatically be published. It does need to be approved, but if approved, then you'll effectively book yourself a room at what I've dubbed the Hotel del SS, where all the members of the Storytellers Society stay. I always get a kick out of that. Yes. Okay, now we're going to head right into the staple of Monday Night Live, and that is Hot Topic for content creators. Hot Topic for content creators. This is where I pitch a hot topic to you, and then you turn around, create your own content on said topic. And you can come at these topics from a variety of angles and come up with your own subjects as we kind of continue to embroider these topics together. Okay, or else you're always welcome to jump into these conversations by dropping some comments down below and or checking out any of my previously pitched hot topic videos, of which can be watched in any order. Okay, and for your convenience, I've created separate playlists for each individual hot topic that may have piqued your interest. So tonight, our hot topic discussion has to do with merit versus market. Yes, merit versus market. And the subject I'd like to focus on for this convo revolves around book covers. Specifically, some people seem to believe that an author's book cover will determine the success of that work, which I can only assume that by success they are referring to sales figures. Perhaps there is some merit to that belief, but I think some individuals can get too hung up on the idea of cover art, as if that is the end-all, be-all of selling a story on the open market. Now, I know there are people who think it's clever to assume that just because an author slaps some money down for their book's cover art, that should serve as an indicator to the quality of the contents contained therein. I know this may come as a surprise for some of you indie artists out there, but not everybody in the underground scene is a broke boy. So for me, a fancy cover doesn't say much beyond the fact that someone decided to spend some money. I mean, it's possible they're trying to make up for something, like someone who feels the need to flaunt their wealth for social validation. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, some of these book covers are just downright gaudy, if you ask me. Sometimes to the point where the actual content of the book can be considered an injustice to the artwork featured on its cover. To me, that's the equivalent of somebody who puts expensive rims on a cheap vehicle, especially when we're talking about books. I just want to say to some of these so-called authors, hasn't anyone ever told you it's what's on the inside that counts? But I digress. Needless to say, I'm not impressed by an author's willingness to throw a few bones to an artist, because that has nothing to do with the story. And for those of you who may be under the impression that your cover needs a Norman Rockwell in order to sell, then I would say keep in mind that sometimes a basic graphic design will work just fine. What I suggest is that you take a look at some of the books on the so-called bestseller lists before you go investing 3 or 4 figs into a fancy cover for your glorified fanfic. Okay? No offense, but I think you'll thank me later. People who buy books based on cover art remind me of the sycophants responsible for propping up self-proclaimed influencers across today's social media wasteland. Thanks to them, algorithmically driven search engines seem to think that everyone and their brother should buy into the pretty girl said what content. Now just take that same concept, but apply it to cover art. And think about the kind of person who buys a book based upon face value alone. This is why I say that a book's cover, or rating for that matter, isn't the best indicator of quality in terms of story. Because it's as if some of these people read books and think, what in the hell is this thing about? Who is this character? Pretty girl said what? I don't know. But she's pretty though. So I'm going to give it 5 stars. Why? Because vagina. I don't know if you guys know this, but apparently sex sells. And this may come as a shock to you, but some book covers are meant to tickle your base sensibilities. That's right. There are plenty of publishers who have no problem putting softcore TNA on full display front and center upon the cover in order to stimulate some sales. This salacious cover art style is typically associated with niche subgenres within romance or erotica, and it's done on purpose as a tactic for targeting a specific market demographic. You know who you are. Excuse me. It's actually quite common to see similar cover art styles being utilized by different authors who are marketing genre fiction. And although it's not a practice that I personally care for, I don't go as far as to condemn it either. What I'm saying is that I understand the logic, at least from a marketing standpoint. It's all about making something new feel familiar to you. So there's a certain degree of comfort and confidence built into the packaging itself. Your mind has the ability to recognize patterns with just a mere glance, which means a reader shopping for a new book may subconsciously associate certain feelings from a past reading experience with their new purchase, simply based on how the cover looks. Speaking of which, there is one specific art style that I have grown to dislike, and that is the cross-promotional book cover. Sometimes when a work of literature is adapted to film, the publishers will release a new edition of the book. The new edition will have cover art that basically serves as an advertisement for the movie, adaptation, or television show. I would say a video game, but usually it's the other way around in that case. The video game is released first, and then all its byproducts follow. Case in point, I have here Gears of War, written by Karen Travis, a #1 New York Times best-selling author. Apparently, her claim to fame is creating right-to-market media tie-ins. And as you can see right here on the cover of this specific novel, it's advertised as, quote, the official prequel to the award-winning video game. I used to be obsessed with the Gears of War franchise. And best believe me, I could hold my own in the multiplayer too. Let's just say I was capable of maintaining a healthy KD ratio as far as that goes. Needless to say, this book is a product of its time and was clearly created just to capitalize upon all the gamers who just couldn't get enough. In my defense, however, the campaigns from the first 3 games contain some damn good storytelling, and I always thought the IP deserved an adaptation. This is about as far as my obsession ever got before I decided to stop. I never went so far as to fill up my home with little figurines and friggin' Funko Pops. Now, I do own a couple other novels that did receive film adaptations as well as cross-promotional book covers. Those titles are Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke and Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Maybe you've heard of them. I can do this here. Okay. Now both are classic novels that have stood the test of time, but are also 2 examples of why I dislike cross-promo book covers. Every time I glance at these fine works of literature, I am reminded of these subpar adaptations that they received, which some of you may have heard me mention before. Maybe someday I'll get around to replacing each copy with a more respectable edition worthy of collecting dust upon my bookshelf. So I think that about covers everything I wanted to say on the subject. Have you ever judged a book by its cover? Do you think expensive cover art carries any merit in regard to the story itself or help with the heavy lifting in terms of marketing? Have you ever been duped into reading a shit story because you fell head over heels for a book cover? Oh, that's something different. I saw Nicole from Nicole's Bookish Nook has stopped by, and she weighs in on the subject. Nicole says, my hot take on book covers is to not tell your whole story via the cover. The cover is to entice readers with a taste, not spoil the whole plot. Plus, it gets way too distracting. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's like examples of that. I want to say I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of any like examples right off the top of my head. I guess one would be like, say if it's like a creature feature, it's like a creature feature, and then like, you know, the big thing about creature features is like the big reveal of the creature itself. But if the cover like gives away like what the creature looks like, then it could be like, you know. Like I never really bought like I never really bought into that. For some people, I guess it's not an issue, but for me, like say it's like a book, it's like Attack of Killer Crabs or something like that. Well, for one, you're giving away the thing right in the title. But then like if you're showing in the cover art as well, like what the crabs look like, because that could be a detail that the book could reveal later on. Like, oh, it's mutated crabs because of radioactive waste or something like that. You know, it's not just regular crabs. That's the rub. That's the catch or the gimmick, if you will. But if they give it away in the title, in the book cover, then yeah, obviously. Nicole goes on to say, if you have 5+ items on your cover and you can barely see your name and even title at times because there's so much stuff on your cover. Now, a cluttered. book cover. However, I am a sucker for a good collage. I do like collage art. But even a collage has some method to the mayhem. Like a collage is not just a bunch of crap just slapped together. Like usually there's like not necessarily maybe a pattern. Maybe there's a pattern, but not always. But there's definitely some sort of method to the mayhem when it comes to collages as well, or like a mosaic. Yes. Well, I reckon about that time. Time to hit the old dusty trail. That's right. That's right, Pilgrim. Time to wrap it up. Trying to wrap things up. I hope y'all had some fun. I hope y'all discovered something new, but don't fret because guess what? I'll be back here for you next week, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. Pacific. You're killing me, Nicole. It's time for me to mosey on out of here. Have a good week.
This offended my sensibilities.